This class, we're going to just look at just Mexico, the art of early Mexico. Be sure you read David Carrasco's piece, the one-page information about the Mexico creation myth called Mesolore, he calls that. And he's actually is considered to be the expert on early Mexican culture and religious traditions and things. So do read that. This is going to make sense when we look later on at this calendar. We look at these three cultures: the Olmecs, the Toltecs, and the Aztecs. Okay, and we're just centering on just Mexico here. The Olmecs are considered to be the mother culture. They're going to set some of the standards that we're going to see both in the Toltecs and the Aztecs later. One of which is the adoration of jade, greenstone, and malachite, which are more prized than gold. Another is the use of ball courts and pyramid-like temple strut systems. That's important to them. And the adoption of Quetzalcoatl as that winged serpent as the main god, the creator of mankind, wisdom, the calendar, all of those type of things. Okay, they're gonna extol other gods and goddesses, but that goddess or god is going to be the most important. They have a gender. We talked about the Olmec heads before. The scale and the mass of these works relate directly to power and endurance. They're all quite different. They all weigh, oh gosh, almost 28,000 pounds. And since the Olmecs and the rest of the Mesoamerican cultures, even in like the Incans and things, nobody used the wheel as an architectural tool, like for a cart or something, because guess what? The llama won't pull a cart. I did not know that until just recently. So even though they knew about the wheel, they used it simply in small like decorations and toy-like things. They never used it to actually pull a cart or move a stone. They had to use other things. These are all different, all of these heads. So they actually work somewhat like portraiture, but the eyes are usually crossed somewhat in these pieces. And I think that's meant for art historians believe that that is sort of a depiction of a trance-like or otherworldly sort of state. Later on, the Aztecs are going to take parts and chunks off of these sculptures as sort of like little power votive things. That's how much power they had. Spiritual power I'm talking about here. La Venta, one of the earliest temple complexes that we know about. We can see the remains of the pyramidal sort of structure, the main temple, but they would have had the ball court and all the hallmarks that we see in later Mesoamerican temple systems. Okay. At La Venta, there are 7 altars. They're all different, but they were meant for the king to sit upon usually a piece of leopard skin. And underneath here, we see this figure on the top here. That is actually the portrait of a king holding 2 ropes on either ends at the bottom there. And he's got 2 captives held in those ropes. In front of him would sit, see this figure below, that's called a chacmul. It's something that would have sat in front of the king. And where the little guy's belly is, right there in the middle of that concave area, that's where the sacrifice would have been placed before the king. These are 2 masks that were made of greenstone, and they are used not to be worn on the face, but slightly like on a piece of garment. They would be used in rituals and buried with the persons, but they would not be placed on the face. They would be tied on to a garment. Okay. The Toltecs will come after the Olmecs. They started out in northern Mexico, and to have a Toltecatl is to have a Toltec heart, a colder into the Aztecs. The Aztecs are going to adopt a lot of what these guys were about. This was a very militaristic society and culture. And the Aztecs just later on just think that the Toltecs were the best thing ever. To have a Toltec heart was to be worthy and excel in all things. They're going to take on a lot of the things that the Olmecs, the Toltecs are, the same God sort of system, and they are short-lived though as a culture. This is Tula or Tola, and you'll see it at both sides. The Pyramid B temple site. I like that. It's a very sort of an antiseptic name for a rather mysterious and beautiful place. You see the broken off columns in the front here that would have been covered and part of an entryway. And at the top of the temple, we see these guys, these Atlantids. They are really caryatids. Caryatids are any kind of column that's made of a figure, of an actual figure of a body of some kind, like you'll see that in Greek architecture as well. Caryatids. Okay. These are actually warriors. They hold a spear, and they would have been painted, especially bright colors, and at the bottom they have red and white stripes to make them look a little bit like a barbershop pole or a peppermint stick. Imagine that would have been kind of wild looking. But this is another shot of them. Quite imposing. Fully frontal. The scale, the mass, they're meant to be powerful. They are meant to be holding up a building top. I mean, on top of it, but they're also meant to be warriors. Okay, that's important. Of course, the top of the roof of the temple is long gone. This is a warrior shirt. This would have been worn. It's made out of 1,200 pieces of oyster shell and mother of pearl. Obviously, it was worn by somebody of great importance. Okay, and I don't know how much of it would have been very, I don't know how much of an armor plating this would give you, but it is beautiful, and it was meant to be, I'm sure, part of more of a ceremonial type of aspect of things. The eagle. This is an important figure. It's got a bundle of wreaths and a stylized ear of corn in some of his spots here. That's what he's grasping onto. This would have been on side of a temple. And this is a coyote head mask, believe it or not. Coyotes, this would have been worn. And coyotes were considered a military or, that kind of a theme, sort of like the god Mars or something like that. War and military. Of course, that would have been all part of the Toltec sort of belief system. Okay, they were a militaristic society. But look at how beautiful it is with that mother of pearl all over the place, and the warrior springing from the coyote's face, his mouth, like he's part man, part coyote, super strong, that kind of a thing. This brings us to the Aztecs. The Aztecs, 1300 to 1521. And yes, you have to talk about human sacrifice when you talk about the Aztecs. Part of the myth system of how the Aztecs came into being was that they were sort of this tribe that they were military, almost like, what do you call those guys? Mercenaries. They were mercenary soldiers, mostly. Mercenary type of society. But they decided they wanted to establish their own space, their own group for power, their own bid for power. So they went to the city of Culhuacan and accepted the ruler's daughter as a bride to the king. And when the dad went to go visit his daughter, he found instead an Aztec priest wearing the skin of his daughter. This is going to add to the mystique of barbarism of the Aztecs. Okay? I don't know if that's true, that story, but that's been being spread around, okay? But the rationale really for human sacrifice was really a matter of survival. It was seen as if you were sacrificed, you did it willingly mostly because you are sacrificing yourself to keep order in the world, abundance in the world. It wasn't done for, it was necessary for all humanity. This was part of us paying the debt to the gods. So that, and the, the, the gods that, made the sun rise and set and the rain fall needed human blood and hearts to be satisfied. And so this was really a religious type of thing. You'll read about this as far as how they've established their main temple complex, Tenochtitlan, okay, or Tenochtitlan. You'll hear it pronounced a lot of different ways. Where they've traveled around, that idea of journey is very important for all of these cultures till they find their homeland. And they're looking for a particular place, or a prickly pear cactus standing on a rock, and on top of it would be an eagle. And that's where they would establish. Okay. Eagles and leopards all represent military things in all of Mesoamerican culture. Okay. And this is the foundation, this is the spot for their capital city. And this is their temple complex. It's quite large, and it's divided into 4 sections, much like the Aztec misnamed calendar. The Aztec calendar really is a depiction of something else. There were twin temple pyramids for the 2 different gods. And the union of these 2 different gods, you'll see it up there on the upper left, was a linkage between the deities of the Toltecs, who remember the Aztecs extolled, thought they were great, and the Aztecs, sort of making them sort of more legitimate to having power. I think they also really believed in the goodness and the greatness of the Toltec culture. Wet and dry, yin and yang, all those sort of things involved in between these 2 gods, which I'm not going to murder the name of which. On the temple precinct, you'll see there features several walls of skull racks. These aren't actual skulls, they're just carved in, and other elaborate sort of carvings. This is called the Aztec calendar stone, but really it's a visual depiction of the creation of the world. The axis mundi, the center of the world, is at the middle. And you'll see in the center of it, the great Aztec god Tonatiuh, representing the sun. He's also got a serpent-like tongue, okay? That's very, very unusual, okay? And it really talks about the 4 cosmic ages of jaguar, wind, fire, and water. The last movement, or last age, is actually considered to be the earthquake one that will lead to the next destruction of the world. I guess we're all waiting for that one. Another of the greenstone jade masks made with mother of pearl as well for the teeth and the conch shell. Ceremonial. This was a god of Mictlan, the Aztec underworld. Okay. And this is, I just think this guy is so charming looking. Kind of, he's got almost like a monkey face. This was in the temple complex. terracotta, so it would have been coiled. Serpent, of course, serpents are made up a lot of the gods. Quetzalcoatl was a serpent. Coatlicue, serpent. There are a lot of serpents, okay? And it's, since the serpent, a snake sheds its skin. There's sort of this idea of rebirth and renewal and transformation. I think they like the snake too because it goes from water to land. That very sort of intermediary sort of power that belongs to this animal. Okay. This was worn on the chest. This is the penacho, which would have been worn as a headdress by the ruler. This on the right is an upright drum played at the top. You see the top is made out of kind of stretched skin there at the top. And not human skin, okay. And it's elaborately carved and decorated. It's quite beautiful. And they come in different sizes, and naturally they would make different sounds, of course. Look at that headdress. Unbelievable color, but that'd been very striking. And these are labrets. They would have been worn in the lip. And there were a lot of these around. These are serpent labrets, and they would have been worn in the lower lip, pierced.